Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Tech Cafe by Flintas. I am Mandar. I am going to moderate the show today. I am a CEO and co-founder of Flintas, and along with me we have a Prasad. Prasad, please feel free to introduce yourself.
Hey guys, hi, how are you doing? I'm Prasad. I'm one of the co founders here at Flentas and head the overall managed services practice. I've been in the industry for around now 9 years now, and I've worked in different roles such as QA automation engineer, performance engineer, cloud infrastructure management, and DevOps. So yeah, Manda, that is a brief introduction from me.
Great. Thanks, Prasad. So Prasad is the tech guy, and I'm the one who is the layman person, and then asking a question on behalf of the audience. So please share if you have any questions. So we have already got few questions earlier, so we'll start with overall topic and what is the main point of the discussion today, right? So after COVID-19, we have seen huge digital trend across the globe, and one of the curious topic, we always debate is should we do the manual provisioning or infra as a code, right? So we are going to cover this topic, and I think Prasad will share bits and pieces about infrastructure as a code as per he has a vast experience doing both the things. So we'll move to our first question and just a high level introduction of the topic. So Prasad, can you share just high level that what infrastructure as a code exactly, and how does it exactly different from manual deployments?
All right. So, infrastructure as code, basically, it is a practice where all your infrastructure management is done using code. So, currently, a lot of cloud service providers they give us an option of interacting with the infrastructure via code, right? Which is nothing but the simple API calls that we have. So, say for an example, you want to start an EC2 instance, you just hit an API and it would be started. If you want to stop an EC2 instance, you can just run an API command and it will be stopped. So infrastructure as code is nothing but an ability for us to manage the complete infrastructure using code. So this is what infrastructure as code is like.
Okay, that's good to know because I have never done coding in my life, so I all I know is the manual deployment. So I'm equally curious that what all tools are currently available for infra provisioning, right? So you can share some tools which you have used, and in your experience you can advise viewers to use these tools.
All right. So when it comes to infrastructure as code, right? So there are three main task categories to IaC, right? One is infrastructure provisioning, wherein we deploy the underlying resources like networks, subnets, security groups, NACLs, load balancers, etc. The next category is configuration of the EC2 instances. For example, hardening the EC2 instance on the CIS benchmark, installing Nginx, installing Tomcat, Apache, etc. And the third main category here is the deployment of the application, which is usually done using a DevOps practice. But we can also do it using code. So these are the main three task categories that are there. So when it comes to infrastructure provisioning, right? So there are cloud native as well as cloud agnostic tools which are there. So for example, if we are on AWS, we have something like CloudFormation. If we are on Azure, we have something like Azure Resource Manager. And in case we want to go agnostic, we can use something like Terraform.
Okay, okay. I think interesting. So can you put more light that how to figure out which tool to use, right? Should we use something like Terraform or should we use something like Cloud Formation? So can you give some throw some light on that aspect as well?
Sure. So there are different tools, which come into play when you have to, set up IaC for each of the phases that I just mentioned, right? So for infrastructure provisioning, you can use, either Terraform or CloudFormation. For configuration management, you can either use Ansible, Chef, or Puppet. There are also native tools like AWS Systems Manager, by which you can configure the underlying EC2 instances. Uh, Again, there are agnostic tools as well, like Terraform and the other tools which are available in the market. But when you ask me about when to use which set of tool, right? So there are environments which are only one cloud specific, right? Where all your resources are deployed on maybe AWS or Azure. In this case, it is always better to go with the native tools like CloudFormation. But in case you have a hybrid kind of a setup, then in that case you can use something like Terraform, where it becomes easier for the development guys to context switch between two different syntaxes or languages.
Okay, okay. Good. So, as per your suggestions, both the tools are powerful enough, right? And both the tools have equal number of features to handle all those automation which is required to handle in infrastructure as a code.
Correct. Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Great. So another question, generally, a lot of people ask me, right? Because when we talk about coding, right, infra as a coding, what all I can think is the development, right, and what all I think is like a Java, .NET, all these fancy languages which people use, and then become a millionaires and billionaires, right? So if a traditional engineer or any engineer who have say basic knowledge of development, right, like me, I hardly code anything now, right? And then as bad as me want to learn infra as a code. What do you advise? Is it possible for engineering students to adopt this kind of tools, adopt this kind of technologies and tools? Can you share
All
some
right.
insights on that?
Sure. So when it comes to start learning IaC, right, it is not at all difficult. People with very minimum experience of coding can learn infrastructure as code in mere couple of weeks, right? So it's not at all difficult. You don't need to have any development background. Just some learning around the documentation and templates will help you understand how the entire IaC works. So it's any layman spending couple of weeks dedicatedly learning on IaC can take it up.
Okay. Wow, that's an interesting insight. So all engineers out there, don't hesitate. Just push yourself a bit, and you could be an expert on infrastructure as a code. I'm sure I will get to try my hand someday when I will get the time. But I will move to the next question. And then we are basically now talking and comparing, between manual provisioning versus infra as a code, right? Can you share some top benefits, right? Why should companies or why should enterprises or why should user choose infrastructure as a code over manual provision? Can you give us some, pros and cons for using IaC?
Correct. So the first thing is it is very easy to use. So as I mentioned, you can spend around a couple of weeks and then you can be there. You can start working on IaC, right? The next important benefit is repeatable in nature. So any IaC code that you write once, say for an example, you write IaC code for creating a S3 bucket. Next time you don't have to write that code from scratch. You can reuse that code, just change a few parameters here and there, which can be reused to create multiple resources on the cloud, multiple S3 buckets. The another important benefit here I would like to talk about is the version control system which is available. So what you can do is you can have versioning there in the IaC code that you have. So say tomorrow you spin up version A, and version A you already have, and then you spin up version B, and then somehow you don't want to keep that version B, you can go back to version A with a few clicks and then deploy version A. So that is another important benefit of
Wow.
IaC.
I think that is a very important feature because I've seen enterprises deploying, and if something goes wrong, they
Correct.
will always want to option to revert back.
Correct, correct. Another important benefit here is on saving time and bringing in standards, right? Because I strongly feel that the ability of bringing in standards is inversely proportional to the manual intervention that is there. So in case you want to bring in standards, right, you can use IaC because Usually what happens is there are multiple people in the team who basically manage and create resources on cloud, right? And at some point of time it really becomes very very difficult to make sure that all the standards are met. So by using IaC, what you can do is you can have pre-baked templates. Say for an example, S3 bucket, right? All the S3 buckets should be encrypted. That is a standard practice you need to have organization wide. But if there are multiple people who are spinning up S3, provisioning S3 buckets, there are chances if they do it manually to miss on setting up encryption, right? So in this case, if you have pre-baked templates, you can reuse them so that all your standards are taken care of. And another beautiful thing is, whenever you push that code into your master branch from which you are going to provision the resources, there is another check of vigilance that happens so that no compliance standards are missed on. So there's a very important benefit out there.
Great. I think and standardization is one of the most factor for all the enterprises when they adopt cloud, because I think cloud keep launching services here and there, right? And then having the standardization is really important.
Yeah, because what happens is a lot of people, right? A lot of a lot of people work on cloud from large enterprises, right? Uh, Initially the account is very good looking, all the best practices are followed, right?
Yeah.
But then over the period of time, once the team changes, or there are multiple people who come in and go, right? There are a lot of resources which are not provisioned according to the best standards. So it is always better to make sure that we have some standard templates in place so that all the compliance, security perspective, cost perspective are there in place. So standardization is a very important benefit here.
Yeah, I agree, because I have interacted with couple of large enterprises, right? And these are global enterprises, right? So they have provision resources in almost all the regions of AWS, and it's really difficult to find in which region what exactly we have and what resources are idle. So I think in such a large setup, I think infrastructure and code will definitely bring a lot of value in terms of standardization.
Correct.
Another yeah.
Another important aspect here is once you create the templates, right, they can be used by anyone in the team. Say for an example, if your senior team creates some templates, and then you have a mix of team wherein you have senior resources as well as junior resources, right? You don't have to be more vigilant on those junior resources key, to check whether these guys have encrypted the S3 buckets or no IDS instances are spinned up in public subnet and so on. Right? Such standard compliance requirements can be taken care by using IaC.
Wow. I think that is a very important point looking at current scenario, right? We are in the middle of great resignation, and finding right people to do infrastructure as a code is also challenging.
Correct.
And definitely, if we can enable a junior engineers, right, or students to adopt this kind of work, I think it will help to increase the digital adoption at a large scale globally. So I think that's a very interesting point. And another question I think asked from one of the enterprise, right? Currently, I think they are hosting a lot of production workloads on AWS, and they're everything they're doing manually, right? They have a pretty good team, and then they're doing good. But they're internally debating that if they should adopt infra as a code, or they should keep doing manual deployments, right? And so the question for them is it possible to switch from manual provisioning to infrastructure as a code, and how easy or how difficult it is to switch your existing practice, which is manual, to a next level practice, which is completely automated. So can you just share your thoughts on that?
Sure. So it totally depends on what quantum of workload is currently deployed on cloud. That is one. Next, yes, it is feasible to incorporate your existing resources which are spinned up manually to import them to ISO. That is very much feasible. But yes, the activity is complex and it is time consuming. But if you look at it in the long run, there are a lot of benefits of IC one can use. So it is feasible, but it is complex and time consuming. But looking at the benefits that IC gives, people should think on it. and in case they have the leverage of that time, and they have skill set enough, they should surely think of bringing all their manually deployed resources to IC.
Okay. So what you're saying is it's definitely feasible, but it's not going to
Yes.
be a easy run, right? It is going to be a
Yes.
complex, and it has to be
Correct.
planned thoroughly.
It has to be planned. Yeah. Correct.
Perfect. And then we'll move to our next question, right? Now, I think you're talking a lot of good things about ISC, right? We would love to know a bit about other side. So, any challenges? Can you put any thought forward that what are the challenges while adopting ISC? Any specific advice you will give whoever wants to adopt ISC?
Correct. So initially, when your team is small, right, it is very easy to manage the entire code, right? But as your team grows, it becomes a bit challenging on management of that code and handling that code. That is one. Second important aspect to look at here is the time, right? So whenever some execution fails somewhere, it may not be easy to restart it from the point where it was actually stuck. You might have to, spin up the entire resource stack from the scratch. So that sometimes is very irritating because you're halfway there, or most of the resources are spinned up, and there's a very small issue that comes up in the stack creation, and then again you have to go back, to the stack and create it from the scratch. Another point that I could think of here is sometimes it becomes difficult, for the engineers to understand the code which is written by someone else. It's not difficult, but then it is time consuming, right? So this is a very important, you know, uh, point here. Next important point here is about the longer turnaround time, right? So say my service engineer gets a ticket of adding a rule in a security group. They can do it in minutes, right? 2 minutes, 5 minutes, whatever it takes for them. But when it comes to IaC, right, the turnaround time for such small requests is also big, because then in this case the change has to be coded, tested,
Hmm.
reviewed, and then
Yeah.
deployed. So the turnaround time for small requests also may take long in the when uh, you start doing it using IaC. So that is one side. Next challenge that usually people face is the feature lag, right? So there are some cloud agnostic tools like Terraform which might not have support to the newly released cloud services, right? So in that case you'll have to spin them manually, and then whenever the tools are capable enough, then you have to incorporate them into IC. So these are some of the challenges that people usually face while using IC.
Okay, got it. I think it's important challenges because cloud providers are launching services now and then, and making sure that
Correct.
having that support is very crucial. But
Right.
I think if you want to standardize it for a larger organization, I think we have to go away with this kind of pitfalls. And another question I think have from one of the startups. Okay, and
Mhm.
we all understand how startup function, right? We are one startup, and we know
Who
what
understands
kind
better?
of what kind of roller coaster ride we go through every day. Okay, so they have a multi-tier application, okay, which they want to deploy on cloud.
Okay.
For the question is right because they want to do it quick, and the business is always demanding, right? So, uh, can you tell us a bit about the time taken to deploy application with the help of manual provisioning versus using infra as a code? So, is it as fast as manual provisioning, or it will take more time? Can you elaborate a bit on that? And is there
Sure,
any
sure.
way to uh,
Quantify.
quantify it? Yeah.
Yes, very good question, right? So, say for an example, there is some workload which I have to deploy, which usually takes 1 week of time by doing it by provisioning the resources manually. But in this case, if I use infrastructure as code, initially it might take double the time that you would take for manual provisioning. It would take a couple of weeks, right? But here you have to understand that when you go on, IS infrastructure as code, right? You are creating templates which are reusable in nature. So initially, when you deploy resources or provision resources using infrastructure as code, the time may be double. but in the long run, it would be 20%, 30% more than the that time required than you require it for the manual. So while you do it for the first time, you're creating a template which is reusable in nature, and then for the future request of provisioning resources, you can reuse the templates.
Okay. So in future we can bring down the time, but initial I think it will take good amount of time compared to manual
Yes,
provisioning.
that's
Perfect.
correct.
And then we'll come to our last question. I think it's a $1 million question from all the enterprises, right? Because if you want to adopt any new technology, right, what is the cost involved in terms of licensing?
Okay.
Are these tools free or it has to be licensed? How does it work? Is it expensive or is it economical? Can you share some insights about it?
All right. Great. So as I said, there are two types of tools, right? Cloud native and cloud agnostic. Cloud native tools are free. Okay. You don't have to pay a single penny if you are using anything like CloudFormation or AWS Systems Manager. You only are charged on the basis of, you're only charged for the resources that you provision using IaC. But when it comes to agnostic tools, there are again, like for example, Terraform. Terraform has their free version as well available. But in case you want to use their enterprise grade features, you will have to pay for it. So this is how it goes. But the good news is, if you go with cloud native tools, it's for free.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think to everyone who wants to adopt it for the free, right? I think you can use cloud native tool. And then we shared, right, what are the benefits of using cloud native versus agnostic. And if you want something like a Terraform, again, you will have an option. You can either go with the open source free version or you can, buy enterprise grade license. So
Correct.
great, I think. And then I think we come to an end with this question. Thanks a lot, Prasad, and thanks everyone. For
You're welcome.
viewers, I think you can reach out to us anytime if you have any queries. We will publish the next topic on which we will go live. And if you have any suggestions or if you want to know more about any specific technology, right, you can feel free to reach out to us, comment on this forum, and we'll try to cover it in the next Tech Cafe by Flintas on LinkedIn Live. Thanks a lot, everyone. Thanks, Prasad, for joining us
Thank
on
you.
the Tech Cafe. See
Thank
ya,
you. Thank you so
everyone.
much. Have a good day, everyone. Thank you.